They're creepy and they're kooky, they're mysterious and spooky. They're all together, Ookie. It's the Addams Family. Hi there. I'm Steve Schweltman. Welcome to another installment of Market House Theater's Cocktails with the Cast, joined with the cast from the Addams Family. It's great seeing everybody, and we always start off our sessions with a toast, and cocktails is a part of this, so please raise your glasses. May we all stay safe during these crazy times, and may we all be back on stage at Market House Theater very soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That was the opening number, and there is something that happens in the opening number and only in the closing number. Anybody want to take a guess as to what that is?
We're all on stage at the same time.
Well, yeah, but it only happens twice. It's Addie dressed as Cousin It.
Yes.
Was that like that?
Tell me about that costume, Angela.
We ended up we started out working with wigs, and they were a disaster. It was the worst possible idea we ever had. And so we switched to muslin, and we went to the dollar store, and we bought all the hula skirts. All the hula skirts we could find at like 4 different dollar stores. And we stitched them on that way. And we made just a tube with a head and on a hat, I think it was mounted on a hat or whatever. And one of my students that I worked with up here, I'm in Pennsylvania right now, but one of my students that was on my costume crew, she wanted to be a part of it. So she actually was making that thing. She hated me afterwards.
Yes.
Hated me afterwards, but it was awesome in the meantime.
That thing looked hot.
Like sexy hot or just?
No, not that.
I'm just
saying. Just like.
Yeah. It wasn't exactly unhot.
That opening number, how hard was it to get that down?
Well, I got it the first time. I'm such a good dancer.
Well,
Josh was perfect.
I know. I
Always.
think spacing wise, when all of the ancestors showed up, they were all upstage left. And I remember the family, like, we couldn't really turn around. Like, we couldn't turn upstage to move out of the way for them. So we were all kind of just safely gravitating backwards and trying not to trip over tombstones and each other. So I think, like, spacing, once we got onto the stage, it took a little adjustment, but yeah, we were all pros dance-wise.
And there were a lot of numbers like that throughout the whole show.
Yes.
We always had to time going through the gates, all the ancestors did, because there were so many of us that if one person slowed down a little bit too much, by the time we got to the end, someone was late.
And we were using tracked music, so we couldn't slow down, or we had to be right on.
And usually by the end of it, you had Madison and Hadley just running out waving as they ran into place. It was usually Seth's fault because as the caveman, he jumped out and took a long time because he got a big whack every time.
Our fantastic choreographer and castmate, Emmy, gave us some liberties there to kind of do something in character. Of course, all of us were in separate costumes. So naturally, the caveman had to come out and just jump and kind of growl because that's what cavemen do.
And Andrea, your character, being a stewardess, you had your own thing too.
Yeah. Well, and I remember backstage, there was a lot of counting going on. It's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, go. There was a lot of that going on.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next clip. And Al, I want you to pay close attention to this.
Oil again! Time for lightning reflexes.
Nice sword play.
Thank you. It takes years of practice. Master that. Especially when you have an opponent like Chuck.
Yeah, he was almost like rigor mortis up there. It's lurched.
Yeah, he's used to that.
Well, Al, you brought Gomez to life. We've seen him in the TV series, the movies, even the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. I know you remember that. What did you bring to the character?
I remember that when Michael told me he wanted me to do an accent, I thought, great. Because I don't know, I didn't want it to sound like I was trying to imitate somebody else. So I tried to come up with something, some little quirk that I could give him. And the only thing I could think of that would not really be that noticeable, hopefully, was to take words that were normally singular and
make them plural.
Make them plural. Mary Bowden loved that. She was the biggest fan of it.
Because
And
it
that's
wasn't
the look I
always
would get every
consistent.
time.
You would
What?
just choose which night certain words to make plural, and it would always be like, I don't know, at my expense or something, and I'm supposed to keep a straight face, and you just decide that, you know, half of a sentence can be plural. It worked.
But not at your expense. It really, honest to God, it was not directed right at you. It really wasn't. Although you thought that a lot of things, like when you come out of the at the beginning, you come out of the kitchen and you say, Wednesday's in the kitchen looking like this, and you make the face where she's supposed to be all goo-goo-eyed. And I was just sitting there watching you, and the first time you did it, you made the face, and then you looked at me and you said, I hate you so hard right now. I didn't do anything. I just sat there. I'm innocent.
We're used to seeing you, Al, play over-the-top characters, and we've seen, working with Chuck, he's played a variety of characters. Is that the most subdued you've ever seen him on stage?
Yes. But that's kind of the way he is in real life.
Brandon.
Anybody that knows Chuck knows. Chuck is like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. I love Chuck. I think he was amazing as Lurch.
Yeah.
It was great.
So let's go on to the next clip, and Emma, this has you in it. We're going to take a look right now. Michael?
I know it's impossible, so I'll confide that I tried, but I can't let it go. It's disgustingly true.
Emma, tell us about that number. That looked like you were having, it looks like it was a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work, you and Anakin having to match all that stuff up.
Yeah, wow, that song is one of the hardest songs I have ever sung in my entire life, I have come to learn. But it was super fun. I loved doing it. Yeah, and it was fun torturing Anakin since he usually made me mad anyway. So I think everyone can relate to that. But
Anakin couldn't be with us tonight, and this was like one of his first big roles. He hadn't been acting that long. Michael, what was it like working with him for someone who's was a newbie at the time?
He had done some of April's stuff with the family series. He was in Best Christmas Pageant Ever, and he had done some things at Clark School with her directing it. But he had a sense of comedy about him. The biggest challenge I had was with the song that we just saw. Anakin would always start moving his arms before the chains pulled him. So he'd be moving and the chains would have to catch up with him to do that. And, like any other actor, he had certain bits that he really liked. Once I gave him the cigar that he wanted to put it in every single scene. And I was constantly going, no, you can't have the cigar in this scene. No, you can't do this in this scene.
But it was. Hey, Emma, we've seen Wednesday in past incarnations as a child. In this show, we see her very differently, as a young adult. Did that bring any challenges for you?
I think the hardest thing was I've always loved the Addams family. I've been told my whole life that I look like Wednesday Addams, so it was really fun. It was really fun to actually play her, but it was difficult because you had to find, and one of the hardest things for me was I had to find the right balance of still like gloomy, like angry, but she's falling in love, so you have to find the right balance of Wednesday Addams all like this, but then also, oh my gosh, she's in love and she's smiling and all of that stuff. So it was playing her as a young adult was harder than if I had to play her as a child. So, but it was super fun. The best part I've ever played. So.
Is it safe to say there's a little bit of Wednesday Addams in you?
Oh, definitely. And my mom tells me all the time when I get really angry. So.
I would see her mom make a comment to Emma, and Emma would give her that look, and I'd go, "That's the Wednesday look I need."
Exactly.
We're going to go ahead and move on to the next clip. This features Mary and the female ensemble cast.
Resistance, then your marriage is a loving kind of coexistence. Lies and secrets, they're the sins that keep a husband from a wife. Known as lovely, he would never keep a secret.
Mary, I noticed that a lot of your numbers in the show, it was you in the chorus. Like Al's solo numbers, it was just him. But most of your solo stuff, you had the chorus backing you up.
Right. I think Morticia is a little more of a show woman. Some show-stopping numbers. She needs some backup. Still the spotlight, but backup.
Well, and I will say that most of your numbers were dance numbers, whereas Al's weren't.
Madison and Andrea, which were your favorite numbers that you performed in the show?
I think my favorite probably was Full Disclosure, being at the dinner table, and we had to do a lot of like freezing and then moving kind of thing. So it was hard because sometimes you have to hold that pose for a really long time while the dialogue is happening, and sometimes people chose some unique choices, had some unique choices as to how they held their bodies for that long. So that was pretty fun. And I just remember that one being especially fun. And then there was a tango, right? I think that one was tough to learn, but it was pretty fun. So I think that those are probably my two favorites.
What about you, Andrea?
I would agree with that. I think my favorite part of Full Disclosure, though, was at the end of the number when we had to create the storm that traps the Beinecke's in the house for the rest of the show. And so we had to very quickly like tear the table and move everything out and close the doors and make everything. And it was a very quick amount of time we're also supposed to be spinning in circles while all of this is happening. But I really liked the tango number too. And I actually injured my toe in that number.
I gotta say, for the chorus, this must have been a great show as far as no costume changes. You just wore the same thing throughout the whole show.
For the most part, there were a few of us that had to do little special numbers. Like there were girls that had to change out and be in swimsuits for the number with Josh. And then some of us were in completely black robes so that we could hide and be stars and the moon.
One of the best parts of this show as an ensemble member, as someone who frequents the ensemble and enjoys it quite a bit, sometimes every free waking moment you have is changing clothes completely and sweating. But luckily, as the caveman, I had a little one shoulder number that kept me cool the whole show. So yeah, not having to change costumes was awesome.
Seth, which was your favorite number?
I think I would agree with Full Disclosure. It was good to be a part of the scenery and kind of be able to experience everything else that the leads and the characters that were speaking were going through, but not have the pressure of having all the eyes on you.
And in that scene, we never knew what was going to come out of Al's mouth.
There's a shot.
There was the guy's name. What was the guy's name that was like this long? And every night it was something different.
Right now, let's say hi to Grandmama.
There are a couple of 90-year-old hotties out there just waiting to chow down on a grandma sandwich. Full. I just peed.
Who had a hard time keeping a straight face in that scene?
I had a hard time keeping a straight face in all the scenes.
I was gonna say, every scene she was in, she stole.
It's a fun part.
Yeah.
Diane's hysterical. She's just a real professional and just knows how to interpret the character. She's great. I'm very partial to her, which is also why it was easy to crack me up during that scene.
It's one of those parts that after she's played it, you can't see anyone else playing it. Like she was the perfect person cast for that role.
Let's see this. This features Mackenzie Kaufman and her big scene in the number.
Waiting on a lousy, rotting, vicious, rancid, flushed out faggot frenzies fatal.
She did a great job in the show. Was that her first performance?
That was her first show at Market House Theater. She had done some other things, and she was the choir teacher at Graves County.
And
I would almost be scared to death watching her get up on that table. Be like, you know.
Well, we all had to hold the tables while she walked on them, and I cannot tell you the number of nights that I thought I was going to lose a thumb or a finger because of her high heel.
Well, and the tables were very narrow, too, to try to fit everybody in that space. So that's why the cast had to hold those down. I don't think most audience members realize how much the cast is doing that is not just acting, but actually helping make the scenery work in a show sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes we forget about that. You know, in that scene, we also saw Bruce Salzman as Mal, and that was his first show at Market House as well.
Right. His daughter actually had done several things with Mary out at the high school, and he decided he was going to try it.
We got another Morticia number. Let's watch this one.
Because death is just around the corner coming for us
all. The good old-fashioned kick line.
And right after the kick line was done, then Mary had to back up and then kind of leap up into the arms of Tony and I think Seth were holding you up in the air as we all gathered around for the end of it. Just about every song that you were in, Mary, I had somebody pick you up in the song. And
Right.
I didn't realize that until I kind of went back through and saw this and went, man, you get picked up a lot in this show.
Well, and a lot of it was me being picked up, and I couldn't look at who was going to pick me up.
Right.
I couldn't double check. I could kind of grab the guys, but I just had to trust, and the wig was, you know.
And it's funny, you had this big dance number in the song, and it's about death.
Yes. Oh man, but I loved that song. It made me laugh while I was singing it in character because she was just having such a good time and I had such a good time. I didn't feel like I was acting all the time during that song, at least, because it was a little more shtick comedy.
You know, I would say that there were a couple of songs in the show that really, the way the show is written, you could take it all the way into camp if you wanted to, but there was a lot of emotional substance to some of those songs too. And I really appreciated how you and Al brought out those levels in those songs to give it more heart to it than just the campy kind of Addams Family that some productions are. So, you know, I really love that part of the show.
I love working with Mary. Mary makes it where it's effortless to play off of her. So you don't, it's almost like you don't have to try as hard. And I mean, not saying that other people are like that were in the show. The whole cast was great. But in terms of Mary's the one I had to take my sense with, it makes it easy. And I love easy.
You know, everybody knows everybody. Sure, there's some new members, but y'all really did come together as a family. And you guys were probably supporting each other backstage during times like that.
For the opening number, we're standing behind the curtain, and especially open dress rehearsal, which was the first time we had anybody out in the audience. And, you know, the fog starts going and the music starts playing, and it was, I don't know.
Well,
Like,
I mean, we were so excited, and the opening,
but nervous. It was like a nervous.
the opening tableau of the show is the family like frozen behind a gate, like in
Right.
the graveyard. But seconds before the curtain opened, we keep looking at each other, like mouthing, like, good show, good show. And we're all like bouncing. And then as soon as it's the cue for the curtain to open is when we freeze, and we just have to channel all of that nervous, excited energy into Addams. But I think all of us were just, we're just so excited. It was an overture that really lent itself to some built up excitement.
Yeah, it was it was also nerve wracking too at the beginning, because I remember good show. God, I think I'm gonna puke. Just that. But then once it starts, it was, just to see the lights and the effects and everybody else in character doing their part that you worked with and spent so much time with, it was exciting.
Yeah, and
was awesome.
That's one of the best parts about Market House and being in it, are those moments that you remember most. And having been in a few Market House musicals, you don't always get not the luxury, but you don't always have a curtain blocking you before something starts. And so, whereas all of the ensemble wasn't behind the curtain for the opener, before the opening of Act 2, we were. And so that was an exciting time, but also probably a nerve-wracking time for Michael, because we weren't always just, perfectly still and silent before the show started. And so we would have to kind of rein each other in sometimes if there was too much joking around.
Well, and I know too, before that opening number, you also had crew people running around the stage with smoke machines, trying to put as much smoke on the stage as you're trying to get into character. So it's like this mixture of I'm being serious while people are spraying you all over with smoke.
Yeah, there were 5 members on the stage during that time.
Yeah.
4 of them were up there the whole time.
I think almost every show too, when the curtain opens and you just see the family, I felt like we were having audience reactions immediately. Like they saw us for the first time and you could hear them vocalize in some way, whether it was that tableau looks familiar, or the set's really cool, but they would vocalize. And I've never been in a show where the curtain opens and people have a response like that.
Well, that was Tom Hanson's last show as a staff member at the theater. After that, he moved to Nashville, and he is still a guest designer occasionally for us with some things. But as Tom's last show, he wanted to make that extra special, that set. So he put in a lot more work and effort to make sure that the gates and that the projections that he designed and created, that all of that looked perfect. And as I was taking the opening clip that we started with of that number, as the curtain opens and the gates start to pull back, of course, that was the one that the gate got stuck partly. So part of the gate didn't open all the way. And then you could see it kind of pull off as the rest of it went the rest of the way. So the show was so great, but it had all these little technical things and set things that had to go just right every night. And, I would say 98% of the time they did.
Well, Josh, we were talking about Esther's big number a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at that right now.
How it can feel when love is real.
Of you, that was one of the most amazing things I've seen on the stage of Market House.
And the most comfortable thing too.
I didn't show the beginning of the clip where Josh moves into place and all of a sudden his costume, his pants are kind of baggy. You see this thing come right up the center of his pants and lift him by the crotch. The audience didn't recognize what was happening there because they were so busy with the black light. But for all of us that knew, it was like, oh, so painful.
Well, I had to make sure I was in the exact right position because I couldn't turn around and look for the bike seat.
Well, and there was, it was a long cantilever behind it. And I don't remember how many people we had balancing you out on that cantilever to lift it. 5 people. So it's kind of
4
like
or 5, yeah.
Seesaw with a bike seat on it that went up, but it all had to be assembled quickly behind the curtain in the scene. while something else was going on, and then snuck out there at the beginning of it, and you had to find it in the dark every night.
Yep.
To know exactly where to stand.
Yeah, so that I would get on the seat correctly.
Yep.
And so there was a curtain actually that we slipped a second curtain that we slipped the seat through, and they were behind that curtain actually. So one evening during a performance, I thought I was going to fall, and that you just have to get on it just right. And once you're on it, there's really no way to adjust because you can't shift your weight a whole lot or you're coming off. So I just kind of lost my focus and thought about not falling off.
This was something for this show. You had to shave your head, and you've got a good look. You've got a good looking head of hair.
Thank you.
How hard was it to say you got to get rid of this for a while?
Well, I really wanted the part, so I said I would. And if Michael asked me at callbacks, he's like, "Will you shave your head?" And I was like, "Yes."
I want to get to that real quick because I auditioned for the show too. I remember Mary messaging me saying, "You coming to auditions?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Do you know of anybody coming?" I said, "Well, who you know's coming." She said, "Well, Josh is coming," and I told her immediately, "There's your fester right there, Josh." And I remember at callbacks, Michael takes us aside. He goes, "Okay, Steve, I know you won't have a problem with it. Josh, you got a problem with shaving your head?" And Josh is like, no, not really. And then we're singing again the last song, and it's la 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 la. And those Josh is going, la 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 la. I'm like, he's not afraid to lose his hair will grow back.
I held on to my
That's
beard
right.
though until like the night before opening
Yes, you had
dress
the beard
rehearsal.
and the shaved head.
Yep.
At the same time. Yes.
Michael was like, "At some point, you're gonna have to lose the beard." I was like, "Yeah, I know.
It is funny when you cast a show, when everybody comes to auditions, as a director, I have a sense of what I want from the characters, but I kind of wait to see what the auditionees do with the part to know who I'm going to go with. So it's not like, oh, I know who I'm going to cast as this and who's going to audition for this and what's going to happen here. And a lot of times, I know Denise can attest to this, I kind of surprise the musical director and Denise when she's stage managing to say, I'll ask them, who do you think I should cast in these parts? And then they'll give me their answers, and then I'll totally come up with a different way of doing it. And they'll go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. But it really does depend on what happens at those auditions.
Well, probably almost a year before the audition. No, not a year. Probably about 8 months before the auditions. I told Mary Bowden, I said, so Addams Family's coming up. And I said, are you going to audition? She said, yes. Yeah. I want to be Gomez and you be Morticia. And she said, okay, sounds good. I said, no, I really want us to do that. She said, okay, I do too. So at callbacks, Michael had Mary and I paired off, and Mackenzie and the dad.
Bruce, maybe?
Bruce. And he had us reading Gomez Morticia scenes. So Mary and I read first. When we got done, Mary turned to me and so supportingly said, you're reading stiff, loosen up. I said, I am loose. She said, if you want the part, loosen up. You're reading stiff.
Is that true?
Yes, that's true. Of course.
Mary!
Didn't you see her crack up laughing? That's how you know it's true.
She's a director.
I know. Sometimes I just can't. I can't shut that part of my brain off.
But, and see, that's the thing though, is like, I actually took it as a compliment, Mary, because I thought that meant you wanted you and me to play Gomez.
Oh, Alan, Mary, this had to be a sense of deja vu for both of you guys with this show, and then prior to this, doing Young Frankenstein. There had to be that sense of deja vu.
Yeah, the roles are very different, but I loved working with Al, and when you're a versatile performer and are given lots of different opportunities, and I'm thankful for Market House to provide those opportunities. But I knew, even more than I wanted to be Morticia, I knew that Al needed to be Gomez. And I was glad that we were given the opportunity be a couple in a totally different light. Totally different. Well, different darkness. Like it was very different.
It's great when you get to work with people that you have an easy time working off of, and that you enjoy being around. And that's the way it was, not only with Mary, but with the entire cast. It was just fun. It was fun to do the show. It was fun to be around Emma and Chuck and Lisa, and I mean, everybody.
I remember when Market House announced they were doing Addams Family, I started practicing for my audition. Like that day, I started learning pulp. I was like, I have to be Wednesday. This is one of my dream roles. And then I remember a week before the auditions, I got strep. And I was like, how am I going to sing this song if I have strep? I remember I walked into my audition and I was like, Michael, I'm getting over strep throat. Please be kind with me because my voice is not all the way there, but it pulled through. But I was so scared.
And I think it was even shortly after auditions, or maybe right after like beginning rehearsals, I found out that I had to have thyroid surgery. I ended up having thyroid cancer. So I ended up having to go to Vanderbilt to have surgery. And so I was like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to sing again, much less dance. So I think I shot you an email. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. But it ended up working out fine. But I think for the first couple months of rehearsal, I was like always wrapped up in a scarf, because you can see now I have a scarf. But it was not pretty in the first month or two of rehearsal. So
every song that we did in the show, whenever that really high-pitched voice came out, I would go, there's Madison, right there. And you can hear it on the end notes of a lot of songs where it just crescendos up, and there's Madison's voice rising above everybody else's. Loved it.
We're now going to move on to one of the probably the most emotional part of the show with Al and Emma, and also Addie Beth. Let's take a look at this clip.
I think of all the days gone, all the ways you go, see you on your own, and then I'm feeling happy and sad again.
That the general public doesn't know, but the cast does know about.
It's not in the play. I mean, the song is in the play.
Right.
The whole dance piece is what I added to it, because I really wanted to see the little girl and the grown-up, adult Wednesday together in Al's eyes, seeing both of them. And I know that, for every dad, especially like me, and Al had a hard time with it too, because those moments kind of really get to you. And I know I wanted a moment where it got out of the funny, campy kind of show, and that song really lends itself to that moment. So adding that dance to it, and we tried with a shadow. I think we tried 4 different things with that until finally we figured out to have Angela give her an exact costume, have Addie Beth come out, and it was the only time Addie Beth appeared in the show that she wasn't Cousin It.
How much of that scene were you looking at the girls thinking of Jansen?
Oh, the whole thing. Every night, every bit of it. I always had a hard time. I love that song. That's one of my favorite songs in the whole show. That's one of the reasons that I auditioned. I thought, even if I don't get the part, I hope I get to sing Happy Sad at least at the audition. And of course, it's like Michael said, when you're a parent, you see yourself and your child in all kinds of situations. At the same time, I lost my mom during that show, so it was very difficult to do the song, but I loved doing the song. I loved getting to try and show that side, because as you mentioned before, it's like I usually play the over the top, crazed kind of characters, and so it was really nice to get to do an emotional song and try to convey the feeling that or the intent of the song. So, but yeah, I was thinking of Jensen the whole time, every night.
I think too, you know, there are moments where actors have that vulnerability that's really hard to direct in or really hard to motivate. But at the end of that song, both Al and Emma had that really wonderful vulnerability of the two people that was beyond just the characters. You know, the father-daughter kind of thing that was going on really, I think, connected with the audiences.
Well, I remember
Go ahead.
Emma's mom told me, she said, well, because I told Emma's mom that I love that song and I'm glad I got to do it with Emma. And she said, well, Emma doesn't cry. So, and there was one night, and I don't remember which night it was, when we get to the end of the song and I looked over there and it looked like she was welling up, which for some reason that sent me over the top. And I don't know, I loved it. I loved working with him. I loved singing the song with her.
Yeah, that last part of the song when we are like embracing and you're singing right to me, it was hard for me not to cry like every night, but there was one specific night when I really just like started crying because you had so much emotion and so much passion, and it was and I was about to be a senior. I was about to leave for school, and my parents were upset, and my mom loves that song and she still gets upset over that song. So it was really fun. It was really awesome. But it was really, it was touching. It really was.
One of the other main characters in the show is Lucas, played by Matt Sullivan, and he had a moment in the show. We're going to see it in this clip.
I'm crazier than you, I'm crazier than you, and now I'll prove to you exactly how. I'm crazier than you, I'll do what you can do, from here on in I get myself
Matt did a great job in that role, and that was hard because he had to act like he couldn't see the ancestors.
You know, usually Seth was pretty good at grabbing those hips and just swinging him back and forth. And then I made him crawl all over the stage after Emma in that number. And he would look at me, I'm like, you're just going to have to degrade yourself as much as you can to win her back.
Oh, man. That number was fun. That was my favorite number in the whole show. It was so much fun.
Next clip we're going to show is the tango. Must have been hard to keep a straight face during that number.
I never saw the rose in Josh's mouth until performances. And then I happened to look over at him one night. I'm like, that's hysterical.
You know,
I just never knew exactly what to do with my feet. So I was like, as long as I get the arms right, nobody will pay attention to my feet.
That number, the tango number, was like 5 minutes long. It had multiple parts to it. And what I remember about it the most was always being afraid at the beginning of it for Mary's costume, for how the costume reveal of the legs was going to happen or not happen. And I think, Angela, we reworked that costume a couple times to try to make sure that the string pulled carefully out. I know that some of the cast, like Andrea and some of the other people that were helping make that change, we didn't want it to get stuck partway open for that.
It was nerve-wracking at first I knew that the costume was going to transform and be a little more Morticia revealing. And so at first I was a little nervous about that aspect of the costume and also needing to focus on the tango. But the costume was fantastic and it completely transformed. And I was thankful I had some help. I did have some help to make that happen so that I didn't have to worry about it while I was dancing. Because as a performer, you don't want to have to worry about too many things while you're dancing or while you're singing. I mean, you are multitasking, but you don't want to have to stress.
That number must have come natural for both you and Al, because I know you're both really good dancers.
Well, I said to Emmy Hensel, I said, can we do something different with the tango at the beginning instead of it just being like just a plain tango? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, can you like throw in elements of the Argentine tango with the kicks? And she's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so I told Mary, I said, hey, I asked Emmy if she'd kind of like throw in elements of the Argentine tango. And Mary said, why? Why? I said, nothing major, just like little things. She goes, why? But it worked.
It was a great show, a lot of memories made. As we wrap things up, I want to hear some funny backstage stories. Who's got one?
This isn't that funny, but you know, as great as Josh's number was, the Moon and Me, what people don't know is that going backstage and going in the dressing room, and he's sitting there putting that makeup and stuff on, that was freaky as all get out to see him in that makeup costume. And the first time I saw it, I went in there and I just kind of stood there looking at him. He said, what, don't I look good? Josh, you're creeping me out with this. But then on stage, it looked great. But yeah, but that's not a funny story, but that's more of a, you know, creep me out story.
I have a story from one of the times Al forgot his lines on stage.
Sarah.
What? Me?
It was, I'm pretty sure it was before One Normal Night. And Al likes to change up his lines when he doesn't remember them. And he said something to me that didn't make sense with what I was supposed to say. And there's a scene at the beginning where it's just all, daddy, please, let me date this boy, whatever. And so he said something completely that was not his line. And I didn't know how to respond. So I just looked at him and went, daddy, please. And that was not my line. And then we all just kind of looked at each other, and then the music started and I started singing.
I remember it was a rehearsal. It was not a show. It was a rehearsal. And I don't even think it was a dress rehearsal, but we were running the full show. And I was backstage talking to Diane, who played Grandma. And I was just talking with her, and truly I was just gushing over previous roles that I've seen her play and her directing work and just how thankful I was to work with her. And then I don't hear anything on stage. And I hear somebody say, like, Mary, that's you. And I was like, of course it is. And so I sprint. And as soon as I step foot on stage, I realize my next line. And my next line is, sorry, I'm late. So it worked. It wasn't supposed to happen, but I thought that it was funny that my line was, sorry, I'm late.
I thought they all did a remarkable job. And it looked so cool. I mean, when those curtains opened and you could see everything on the monitor, I can't imagine what it looked like from the audience. It was just really, really neat. I'm glad it was
one of my favorites.
And I will say, the Home did a really nice job with the music direction for the show, bringing the whole chorus in together. And a lot of these musicals are not easy to sing. You know, the multi-part harmonies, and they kind of put people up in the stratosphere or down in the basement with their voices. So the cast did a great job, and Lisa did a great job as musical director for it. And she was in the back because we had tracks. She and I traded off who ran sound for it. And when some people did forget their lines, we did come in early to save them sometimes.
I still don't know what you're talking about. I swear to God, I don't remember what line I forgot.
One of my favorite Lisa stories was in callbacks. She's like, "No, Josh, I have you down as a bass." I'm like, pretty sure that's not the part I'm gonna be singing. And then Fester has a high A, so she was like, "Yeah, you're definitely not a bass."
Yeah, see, that's like during music rehearsals. Lisa would be like, "Who's going to take the A? Well, who's going to take the F? Or who's going to take that?" And I'm sitting there think because I am completely musically challenged, and I'm sitting there saying, "Lisa, there's black marks all over my paper. I can't see what it says." Then there's always the one person who says, "Those are the notes you're supposed to sing." So, yeah, I know.
Well, I know that Lisa had put me as a second soprano, and I am not anywhere close to that. And when Isaac, I think it was Isaac, decided he couldn't be in the show, I said, well, I can sing tenor with the guys. And so thank the Lord, Josh was amazing and helped me muddle through the tenor line, because it was written in the treble clef where I'm used to reading it in the bass clef. So that was new for me, but Josh was awesome.
And I think we needed you, because I think Fowler and I were the only two singing first tenor. So we needed someone else.
Well, mine and Mary's duet, after we reconcile, I don't remember the name of the song. I don't know if we ever did the choreography right, because during rehearsals, not during a performance, but we would like do a move, and each time I'd kind of whisper under my breath, like, "Is this right? Is this right?" She goes, "I don't know, keep going." But I don't think we ever did what we were supposed to do.
Tina and I were just talking. Addams Family was the first show that we costumed for Market House.
Right.
And we costumed it completely remotely. We never met any of you. We knew nothing of you except for you were numbers on a page. And I mean, we had nothing. We had no pictures, no anything of any of you. And so that was really quite a challenge.
And we did it in 5 weeks.
Yeah, we did the whole time.
It was, and we had seen the show one time when someone from our church did it at high school. And so we were channeling.
Like we were tapping into all of
what
that.
What do we remember? And then we
really
had this, it was, yeah. And we were so thrilled when the pictures came out and the previews were like, we wanted it to look like that. It worked,
except for Al, your suit as Gomez. That sucker was black and it turned out purple.
Yeah.
You all noticed that, right?
It read hot pink under the lights because of the way the fabric reflected back the red lights.
Wow.
And we were like, Gomez is pink.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember getting the costumes for Morticia, and there were kind of like 4 choices, I think, that you had for when we did this reveal and other things. And I remember
just her stockings. Yeah, her stockings.
Stockings, that's what it was. We had multiple stocking choices, and we kind of looked at each other, and you went, I don't think I can wear that. And I would get on the phone and go, Angela, I don't think we're doing that one. I think we're doing something else over here.
That was fine. We just wanted you to. We wanted you to have options. Yes.
There was a rehearsal where I wore one. I was just trying different stockings, and I tried one pair. And after the show, Michael said, "You need to wear something." And I said, "I did. I wore one of the options." And he said, "Well, don't wear that." Noted. Yeah.
That's why you had black Spankies.
Yes.
Yes. Because
this show involved a lot of makeup. We all had
I meant to ask you about that.
Pasty white with like dark circles and hollowed out cheeks, and we had to look, at least the chorus had to look for the most part dead. So that entire summer, I remember staying inside. I did not go out by the pool and tan like my normal summer routine, because I was like, nope, got to stay pale. But you know, in the theater environment, sharing is caring, right? So we would have like a couple things of white makeup, and we all would grab a sponge and start slathering up our arms and our face and our chest and back and everywhere. And I just, Now looking back on that, I'm like, oh, that would not fly in COVID times.
And I remember too, as you guys kept doing it, you kept putting more and more and more on. And finally go, stop, stop, stop. Let's go back a couple of steps. Because the death became like hollowed out death. So it was really creepy.
With some of the makeup, you know, some of us had our arms exposed and things like that. So my costume had short sleeves, but then I had gloves. So instead of painting my arms white, I actually cut tights and fashioned them and hooked them so that I could wear the tights instead of having to paint my arms every night. And there were a couple of us, but then like Emmy, her whole chest and back was exposed because she was the flapper. And so she had no choice but to paint her whole shoulders and back and everything.
I have a little more surface area to cover than Emmy did.
Yes.
The call time was a little bit earlier than some people's.
Yes.
And we worked and worked and worked on makeup for the Moon and Me scene because it had to be thick enough and heavy enough for it to glow. So at intermission, Emmy painted my face with latex paint.
Oh.
So I wore latex paint through that number, would run off stage, wipe it all off, and reapply with what I'd put on in the beginning.
Right. We tried the glow-in-the-dark makeup, and it just didn't read. And finally, we just said, can we use like out of a tube white latex paint and paint his face so that it's water, it doesn't hurt the skin, but it has to come off after that. So yes, Emmy literally painted him each night.
I just realized I look like the Pillsbury Doughboy in that scene.
Well, Addams Family was certainly a very memorable musical. It was fantastic to watch from the audience. And once again, great job from everybody. And thank you for spending some time with us. It's great to getting everybody back together again to relive some memories and fill some folks in on some behind-the-scenes secrets. 2 weeks, we'll be reuniting another cast from a past show at Market House Theater for you to find out what went on during and prior to the show. So make sure you check back with us 2 weeks from now for another edition of Cocktails with the Cast from Market House Theater. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye.